your awareness catches up to where you are, I think then you can ask yourself the question again. Of like, all right, I made it to the next base camp. Am I really willing to put my gear back on and trek up to the next level? Because here's the thing, not everybody should.
Do you know what you've signed up for with your goals? You can't really, I don't want to say you can't, you shouldn't desire growth beyond what you're willing to tolerate in terms of growing pains.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was episode number 1309, the number one cause of drama in your life. Today, for episode number 1310, I got to figure out 1310, 1310, I don't know. One place you really need to be honest with yourself. So if you listen to this podcast, you most likely would identify as the type of person who is into growth. The question after that is, how into growth are you actually? And here's why this matters. For some people, growing is a requirement, just who they are as a human being. Alan, I would argue that you are somebody who growth is a requirement. Even if you didn't have giant goals, I'm sure you'd probably want to grow every single day. I know that's the reason you do, but I just feel like you're a very growth-focused human being. Where I'm not as focused on growth, but that is, well, we'll talk about that in a second. That's just who I am. I like growing, but oftentimes me turning on an audiobook when I'm in the shower or whatever it is kind of a chore. Where for you, I think it's more natural. You're like, oh, I'm excited to learn. I'm not always super excited to learn, believe it or not, but I have goals that require me to learn. So that's part one. So how personally important is growth to you? Part one. Part two, how important is growth for you when it comes to your overall goals? I think there can be a disconnect for some of us where we want to start a business, or we want to have a very successful relationship, or we want to achieve some sort of physical conditioning where we don't understand how much growth it's actually going to take to get there. We've seen this often with the podcast where some people will come in, and this has happened many times. Somebody will come in, they'll find the podcast. They'll start listening to the podcast. They'll join Next Level Nation. They'll join a group coaching program. They'll come to everything that we have, and they might get burnt out with us and then run away. And I think one of the reasons is they believe they're more focused on growth than they actually are. So I think they get burnt out because you go too deep too quickly. And I really think, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a great thing that you're so focused on experimenting and exploring the business. But if it burns you out and you have to run away, it's not sustainable. So that's kind of our intention with this episode is, if you're not honest with yourself about the level of growth that you desire and is required of you, it's going to be very hard to stay consistent and create a sustainable runway for that.
So I want to anonymously share two different people. Very blessed to coach people because you get to know so many people at such a deep, intimate level. And I'll keep this anonymous, of course, but I'm just going to describe two people sort of high level here. One person is in his earlier years. I'm just going to kind of keep it a little bit vague because I don't want anyone to be able to identify. But very, 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 very into growth for his age. It's very clear to me that he is actually obsessed with growth. There's an obsession there. There's a must. And he has a lot of self-belief. He has huge goals. They seem to be very, very locked into what he actually wants, not just like, I have goals because I'm supposed to have goals, but like really what he wants. Mm-hmm. And I've actually started to decipher between those two recently. Like, there's some people who have goals that they want to achieve but aren't really connected to, and then there's other people that really intend on actually doing whatever it takes to get there. He's the intender. That's the difference between an intention and a goal, I think, is one of them you actually intend to do and you do whatever it takes. The other one is just kind of like, I wish that this would happen. And again, nothing wrong with either of those, but I think it's important to know the difference. So huge goals, very connected to them, deeply obsessed with learning. And so I'll give you a perfect example. Homework assignments after every one of my calls. My coaching probably sounds wicked fun. But one of the coaching calls was about cognitive biases. And if you don't know what the cognitive biases are, you can look them up. It's essentially the blind spots that we have in our own consciousness. A good way to think of this is magicians are really good at leveraging our cognitive biases to make it seem like they're doing magic, when in reality, they're just hoodwinking us, for lack of better phrasing. So we hoodwink ourselves. That's what the cognitive biases are built on. It's a whole psychological concept. So you can look up the cognitive biases. So I sent him a speech and I sent him all the cognitive biases, and he was like, oh my God, this is like unbelievable. And he's like, I've always wondered why I was different than some of my friends at school and XYZ. I'm like, yeah, so you're more of a rational thinker who has overcome a lot of his cognitive biases compared to the sample size you're around of your peers at that age. He's overcome more cognitive biases than I had at his age. So anyways, that's someone who's obsessed with growth. That's someone who growth isn't just something they need to do. It's something they want to do. And it's something that it's who they are. It's more of who they are. Emilia falls into that category. Growth is who she is. It's who she is. She doesn't know how to be any other way. If you don't identify with that, that's okay. I think we've already talked about the relationship paradigm versus the growth paradigm. Okay, the majority of the population is in a relationship paradigm. In other words, most of what you do unconsciously is based on what your peer group is doing. The growth paradigm is the opposite. The growth paradigm is most of what you do is to maximize your potential, and then your peer group is a byproduct. Versus the opposite is your peer group is the main focus, and then growth is a byproduct. I'm not making one right or wrong. I'm saying it's very important to identify which one you are and which one you want to be, and most importantly, which one you need to be in order to achieve your goals. Okay, so now I'm going to describe this other person, okay? I love both these people very much. I'm a big fan of both of these people, okay? But they're very, very different. This other person doesn't really like books, doesn't really want to, and Kev, I'm not talking about you.
I was going to say.
Are we talking about Kev here? I wouldn't do that anonymously. I would just talk about Kevin. This person doesn't really like books. It's a pain in the butt to read books. She doesn't really want to come to book club. She'll still come, but she doesn't really want to come. She's coming because her peers are there. She's coming for the relationships in the community. She's not coming because she loves reading books. She certainly doesn't love Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess by Dr. Caroline Leaf, which is a very deep, science-y book. It's not very well transcoded, in my opinion. Sorry, Dr. Caroline Leaf. But it's a super valuable book. She grows not because she wants to, but because she has to in order to achieve her dreams. She went to a really good school, not because she wanted to, but because she had to achieve her dreams. Growth is kind of a pain in her ass, honestly. I'm kind of a pain in her ass, to be completely honest. But she tolerates me and she tolerates growth because that is what is required for her to achieve her dreams. And she knows that. But if you took her dreams away, she would just not grow much. She wouldn't grow much. She wouldn't be around me as much. And that's okay. And if you identify as that, that is okay. It's important to understand. Now, this is not a 0 or a 1. This is a spectrum from 0 to 10. 10 is growth is who you are. It's who you've always been. It's who you're always going to be. And you don't really know how to prioritize much outside of that. 0 is, honestly, growth is entirely a pain in the butt. You don't want anything to do with it. And it really is something that just is a pain in the butt. It's not something you're seeking after. It's not something you enjoy. It's not something that's part of who you are. 0 to 10. Those are the floor and the ceiling. Floor and the ceiling. I'm using my hands if you're on YouTube. And I did it improperly. Every one of us falls somewhere in between. I was not a 10 when I didn't start reading books until 26 years old. I was not a 10. Now, I was more into growth than most of my peers at the time, and that's fair. And I think I've always been more goal and growth oriented than most people, statistically speaking. But I was not a 10. So the point is, do not feel bad wherever you're at. Identify where you're at and identify whether or not that is optimal for your goals, your dreams, and your life. And the very last piece of this that I'll say before I kick to Kev is, you cannot want level 10 results without also wanting level 10 growth in that arena. And I guess I shouldn't say you can't want it. Kev's like, well, you can want it. You just can't expect it. And so if you don't want to become a level 10 swimmer, you can't expect an Olympic swimming gold medal. And that's just the way it works, unfortunately. And therefore, you have to want the growing pains. You have to want the mastery that comes with it. And I think that's what this episode's about.
Well, and we've had situations and scenarios where people close to us think they want a certain level of success. And then when they find out what it'll take, and again, this isn't a bad thing. I completely understand. They say, honestly, if it comes with all that, I don't think that's exactly what I want. It's like, good for you for figuring it out early. At least you
Seriously.
figured it out before you invested years and committed your life to accomplishing that. Because if you did, you'd end up very unfulfilled, very miserable, and probably feel stuck in many ways. So that's really why I want to do this episode, because I don't know, it's like, how into growth are you? Or maybe it's the most out of your friends, but what does that mean? What does that mean to you as a human being? Does that mean you read books every day? Does it mean that when you don't read books every day, you're unhappy and unfulfilled, but you don't know why? Interesting. Okay. Does it mean you have giant goals and you must learn every day? Okay. Are you actually on pace for what you must learn in order to accomplish your goals? Okay. I guess it's a really simple question. How important is growth to you personally? But then it's like, there's so many intricacies that go to that.
Well, let me ask you, Kev. So 0 to 10 on that spectrum.
Oh boy.
0 is I hate growth. I hate everything to do with growth. I've never enjoyed it. It's completely unfulfilling. 10 is growth is who I am every second of every day. Where were you when you were 26 or 6 years ago when we first started this podcast, which wasn't 26, but 6 years ago when we first started the Hyperconscious podcast? Where were you? 0 to 10.
Probably like a 2.
Okay, where are you now?
I don't know. I think it's hard for me to know because I compare to you transparently. It's like, I compare to other people, but I think I'm used to being ahead of other people. I mean, obviously 1,300 episodes, all that, the goals that we have, I don't mean ahead. I have to care more and focus more on growth than most humans, but I'll never focus as much on it as you. So I want to say like maybe a 7.5.
Fair. Well, you did build a business with me entirely around personal growth.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the time, I don't know if I knew what it was actually going to be. I thought we'd be talking hyperconscious thing.
Yeah.
I have one episode later this week is very hyperconscious, where I had the moment of like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a very hyperconscious episode.
Nice.
But yeah, I think I appreciate growth more than I ever have. Is it still a pain in the butt? So this morning I got up, I told Taryn last night, I don't know if I told her, but I was like, I'm not doing the dishes tonight. Like she cooked a bunch and I was like, I'm not doing them tonight. I'll do them tomorrow morning. So I got up and I listened to our podcast. I reviewed our podcast. I don't want to. I wanted to listen to music. 100%. Yeah. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. The last thing I want to do is hear myself talking to myself in my brain talking to you. I don't want it.
It's a lot of feedback too, because you're going to hear all the good and the Jeffings. And it's like, it's work. That's us at work.
Yeah.
So
I just think it's very important where it's almost like, how into growth physically are you? Whatever that means to you. More mobility, more exercise, more water, more consciousness, whatever it means. Okay, is that helping you or is that hurting you? It's kind of the same for growth, right? It's like, I value growth. Say I value growth on a level 7. Would it serve me to try to value growth a little bit more? Because maybe I'm way under where I actually want to be. Or am I going to regret not being focused on growth more now? Right? I don't think I will, because I'm probably more focused on growth than I actually want to be, transparently. Again, I try to be very honest about that because I think a lot of people probably resonate with that. But I don't want to wake up one day and be like, man, if I just focused a little bit more on this earlier in life, I wouldn't be having these problems. I don't want that. But I also try to think of that from, okay, growth in relationships. It's like, do you you actually want to have an amazing relationship, or do you like the idea of having one?
Right.
And those are just two different things, and that's okay. I never understood how much effort and energy and intention and reflection and discomfort it took to get a truly magnificent relationship. I didn't understand that.
Same.
I didn't understand that. Do I understand what it will take to have my relationship multiplied 15 years from today when life is completely different? Not really, no. I don't currently. I know what it currently takes. But when we're more successful and I don't know what it's going to take. right? I believe I can do it, and I believe Taryn can do it, and I believe together we can do it, but I don't know what that'll take. I'm committed to that. I think that's the difference. The difference is how important is growth and how committed to growth are you? Are you committed at the level that it's important to you?
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda. I am a dental hygienist and a mom of 2 teenagers. I was first introduced to Kevin and Alan about 3 years ago. So that led me to book a consultation with Alan, and I showed up to that call in the lowest spot that I have been at in my entire life. He is a good human that genuinely wants the best in your life, your future, your love, your relationships, your wealth, and you have the chance to be in the same room or on the same call or have these 2 in your life in any way, then you are blessed.
I want to ask you this and I know we're doing a 20-minute episode here, so we're keeping an eye on the clock.
We're going to try, you know what I mean?
We're going to try. Well, so here's my question. You're committed to that. So 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road, you and Taryn having a magnificent marriage. You're committed to that. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a couple questions in that. What does magnificent mean to you? Mm-hmm. What does magnificent mean to her? And then what is that going to require of you and of her in terms of time and effort?
Yeah.
And money in some ways. So, and you say you're committed to that. Guess what? You probably are going to have to grow more than you thought in order for that to actually happen. And that's one thing that I don't think I've ever been able to articulate well for people. And I actually want to ask you the question in a second, but I was talking to Amelia last night because we did a Conscious Couples podcast episode last night. It's Sunday night. The last thing I wanted to do was record, but I also am committed to never missing a week, and we would have missed if we didn't record. Genuinely, it's 6 p.m. on a Sunday, Kev. I did not want to do that.
I was in bed, so
yeah,
I feel
exactly.
you.
Yeah. But we did it. We did it, and we did our best, and we showed up for our listeners. And that's what we've committed to. Show up for each other, show up for the listeners, show up for the business. It is what it is. Okay. I said, sweetheart, and this is after the episode finished, I said, we got here in our relationship because of both of us, but it's more you than me. And here's why. She's more emotionally mature than I am. And we have a formula for emotional maturity. We already went through it on a previous episode. If you didn't hear that episode, high level, emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, and emotional adaptability. I've never met someone more in control of her own emotions than Amelia Smith. She's never lost her temper. She's never yelled at me. Nothing. It's like unbelievable. So I said, we got here because of you more than me. I need you to lead us because I don't know what to do. We're coming off Next Level Live, Group 10. I've been really spread thin. This last quarter's been very challenging. We haven't had a lot of quality time in comparison to what we have in the past. And we're not bad. We're great. We're good. We've reassured each other that we're good. But it's not an overflowing like we're used to. It's not like us rainbows and butterflies overflowing with love and abundance and intimacy because we just haven't invested the time and effort as much. And running that business together, plus all the stuff going on at NLU, we've been investing more in the business our business is called the we, than we have been in the relationship, the we. And we know that, and we're talking about it. So I said, sweetheart, you're going to have to lead because you're ahead of me in this. I don't know what's best for us necessarily. Now, I can have my perspective, but basically this is what happened, Kevin. I'll share this with you briefly. You and I asked Taryn and Amelia for grace prior to Next Level Live because we had a big live event coming up. We were spread really thin. And then on top of that, we had group coaching coming up as well. So we asked for grace. We need grace this month. I said, sweetheart, I don't think that you stepped off the grace. Now I need you to lead again. Because you let me kind of lead during that month, which I asked for, which I'm grateful for. But now I need you to, I'm tagging you back in here. What do we need? What do we got to do? Do we need more quality time? Do we need more check-ins? What do you think? Right? And I've been tapping into her greatness in terms of her emotional mastery from the beginning of our relationship. That's honestly why we've never fought. It's not because of me. It's because I'm trying to learn from her. Because she's been studying this stuff since she was a kid, and I just started studying it at 26. So anyways, to bring this full circle here, you want to have and are committed to a magnificent relationship, Kev. And you just admitted you have no idea what that's going to take. To bring this back to the listeners, what if they have no idea what their dreams are going to take? And what if they're not as into growth as they're going to need to be in order to get those results. This is the philosophical hyperconscious question. What if that's true? What if you and I's dreams are impossible without more growth? And then we're reluctant to do it because we don't like it as much, quote unquote. We won't know that until later on. And so my question for you, Kev, is how have you dealt with that?
I just haven't I haven't gotten my goals yet. I think that's probably the easiest way to put it, where I think for everybody it's going to, I think of it this way. You probably have you definitely have a deeper understanding of physically what it will take to get us to our goals, but not necessarily emotionally. Now, I think you're learning that. So like even for you, it's going to be different than you thought, just in different ways. It already is,
definitely.
Yeah. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think you possibly could know. How could you possibly?
Not fully.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not fully.
I don't know if anybody could fully know on all fronts. So it's just, I check in with how do I actually like what I'm doing? I just always have that conversation with myself. I've told you this before. I can't promise you I'm going to work with you until I'm 90. I'm going to try. But I might get to the point eventually where it's like, honestly, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't think it's going to happen. But does anybody? Does anybody think they're going to get a divorce or sell their business? I don't know.
Right.
You know, I just think I try to be present. I try to be present where I am, but then understand the possibilities that are coming eventually. That's the best answer I can give. I just try to sit with like, oh, wow, this business thing is drastically different than I expected in many, 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 many ways. Interesting. What does that mean?
You know what's fascinating, Kev? The emotional side of it is way different than I thought. The business side is exactly what I thought.
Yeah.
But that's because my awareness was higher in business than it was in emotional mastery, and vice versa. For you, I think on the emotional side, this is exactly what you expected.
I don't know.
Well, it makes sense because if the business requires more of you than you originally thought, of course you're going to understand the implications of that in your relationship and your quality time with yourself and with Taryn and your friends. So you're right. It's almost like you can only know to the level of your awareness, but your awareness is always inadequate.
Yeah. When your awareness
at least to
catches
some
up,
extent.
Yeah, when your awareness catches up to where you are, I think then you can ask yourself the question again. Of like, all right, I made it to the next base camp. Am I really willing to put my gear back on and trek up to the next level? Because here's the thing, not everybody should. That's just the plain and simple truth, where I don't believe you should necessarily try to change the world in the same exact way as somebody else. You can change the world in your own way, but it doesn't mean you have to do whatever, 2,000 podcast, whatever it means to you. I just think that's important because say I grow, just say hypothetically, I grow 10% every year. Whatever that means, it doesn't matter. It's just a measure. Say I grow 10% every year. You might only grow 1% every year. That's okay. Maybe that 1% is in line with your goals. Maybe 10% isn't in line with my goals. Maybe I need to grow 25% every year. That's really Alan's saying yes if you're just listening.
10% is not nearly enough for you to achieve what you want.
but I think that I am not under the illusion that I will ever be growing enough, I don't think. I think I'm aware that I'm always going to be behind because, of course I am. I'm never going to actually accomplish the goals I have. I just think that's important for us to figure out as human beings because here's the real truth. Like, heart-driven but no BS. Some of you listening should be clients. Some of you listening might not ever need to be clients. It might not be what's best for you. That's all. And if you're not aware of that, you can't attack your goals in the best way possible. That's my point of this episode.
The analogy, I forget where I heard it. I wish I could give credit, but I told you this, Kev. I don't know if it was behind the scenes or on a previous episode. But let's say there's two climbers. Let's say one of them, no one knows, but one of them's a world-class mountain climber, and the other one is a beginner. When you're on the bunny hill, you can't tell the difference that much. And Kev, you know, because you do UFC, or you do UFC. You watch a lot of UFC and study a lot of UFC. So two fighters that aren't fighting, you can't tell the difference as much if you don't have the eye for it or the knowledge. But there can be two fighters that look similar, of similar stature to someone who's a newbie, that I couldn't tell the difference of who's going to win. Whereas like, that person's in trouble. They're in a lot of trouble. It's kind of like, I'll go back to the mountain climbers quickly. On the bunny hill, you can't tell the difference. And I'm going to use Kevin and I for just a second. When it comes to business only, okay? Let's use my what I think I'm higher in. So when it comes to business acumen or finance or whatever, math, you name it. Okay, on the bunny hill, you can't tell the difference between Kevin and I. If we go climb Mount Everest, aka our goals get way bigger, you're going to start noticing the difference. There's a big difference in you and me depending on the size of the goal. Just like if we go to the gym together and we're squatting 400 pounds, there's going to be a huge difference between me and you. You're going to be fine. My legs are going to snap.
I'll die slower than you. That's right now. That's
exactly. You'll die slower than me. But if we're squatting 25 pounds on each side, you and I are going to both look like pros. All good. That's the analogy here of like, do you know what you've signed up for with your goals? You can't really, I don't want to say you can't. You shouldn't desire growth beyond what you're willing to tolerate in terms of growing pains. Because the growing pains are very, very real. Emilia and I had a moment the other night where it's like, this is what we signed up for. Like of course we don't record 6 p.m. on a Sunday. It's been a long day. It's been a long week. It's been a long month. It's been a long quarter. But this is what we signed up for. This is what our goals require of us. So we either have to lower our goals, which is not an option, or we have to figure it out. And so we figured it out. But that's a conversation that everyone has to have within their own consciousness. And I hope that you're having it consistently. And I hope you're rehaving it over and over and over again.
I'm glad we did this one. Again, you never know. You never know what these episodes are going to entail until you do them, but I'm glad it went the way it did. Next Level Nation, we have a meetup coming up about money. I don't believe most of us learned as much as we should have about money, considering it's something we use every single day, and it's one of the main stressors for most human beings. May 4th, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, our meetup, the 3 most valuable things you never learned about money. We will make it easily digestible. It'll be a great place for you to meet other people. It's not going to be a lecture. It's going to be an experience. So please join us. We will have the registration link in the show notes.
So I did an analysis recently of all the different clients that I've had in the past, and it's been nothing short of magnificent to meet so many people from all over the world. But one of the common denominators that I did notice, and Kevin already alluded to this, is that the people who have the highest goals and the highest self-belief tend to stick with me longest. Every great fighter needs the right person in their corner. If you do have large goals that you really are committed to hitting, I am the right person to put in your corner. If you don't, that's okay, but I might not be the right fit for you. And I'm just learning a lot of that now, honestly. And I'm only 34, so I'm still young, but like, I'm glad I learned this early rather than later. If you are really into growth, if you really do have big goals that, quite frankly, you don't know how you're going to get there, I am the right person. So please reach out. It's called Peak Performance Coaching. I'm going to help you dial in a system, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. The how in particular. A lot of people don't know how. I can help you with the how. Please reach out. You can email me, alan@nextleveluniverse.com, or you can click the link in the show notes to book a half an hour free session on my calendar, and I can't wait to meet you.
Well, if Alan wasn't here, I would tell you I built this thing from the ground up with my own bare hands, walking uphill both ways in the snow, negative 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Alan is the biggest reason we are where we are today, and he has been the coach I never knew I needed for the last however many years. 12 years if you ask Alan, 6 years if you ask me. So I can second everything he said, and I think sometimes it coming from somebody who has been helped is more powerful than the person who's doing the helping. So just wanted to add that.
Appreciate it, man.
You're very welcome, brethren. You're very welcome. Tomorrow, for episode number 1311, I'm excited to talk about this one. This was actually my wonderful wife's suggestion. Why relationships get stale. I'm very excited to talk about that one, especially if you're in a relationship. If you're not, it's important too, because if you want to be in a relationship, you got to figure out how to sustain it. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Keep it honest, Next Level Nation.